This article is about what's called Mendel's account, and it's essentially something that's been produced by John Sandford. It's a follow on from his work on genetic entropy. In his very important work on genetic entropy, John Sandford makes the point that evolution cannot explain the complexity of life because time is its enemy, not its friend. What does he mean by that? Well, basically, the genetic system produces mistakes every time it reproduces, whatever form of life you have. And humans, we have about 100 mistakes every generation. These are mistakes which are, almost in every case, too small for natural selection to take out, and therefore they are passed on to the next generation and they are permanently fixed in the system. They don't go away. Well, it doesn't take too much logic to work out that this is going to be a one-way road to genetic destruction. And that means that the genetic code on which life is dependent is only thousands of years old. Millions of years of mistakes and errors would have destroyed the effectiveness of the code. Well, in Mendel's accountant, basically what John Sandford and his compatriots are doing is creating a computer system that would test evolutionary theories using their own paradigms and their own sort of programs, and just working out, based on realistic assumptions about how the world of genetics actually does work, what would happen to the genetic code with the types of mutations we know are happening in the real world. And contrary to the sort of evolutionary speculation that this would inevitably lead to evolutionary progress, the real results of realistic assumptions is quite the opposite. And intuitively, that's what we would expect. Intuitively, we know that things that are designed will decay over time. It's not difficult to understand that. Everything we experience in life tells us time is not the friend of designed objects. It takes designed objects and they become less well designed, they become, as it were, less efficient. Houses decay over time, cars decay over time, computer programs decay over time. Everything that is designed will decay over time. Well, therefore, it's not surprising that the genetic code will have the same experience. And this is interesting because these works that John Sandford has done on genetic entropy and on Mendel's accountant have never been refuted in peer-reviewed literature. There is almost a complete absence of attempts to even deal with these problems. Yet they are pretty obvious problems, and they are absolutely critical to evolution's success. And if you don't address these problems, then you are being disingenuous. You're not really seeking after truth. You're trying to avoid the things you don't want to see. And that has been John Sandford's experience, that essentially none of the relevant, competent scientists have ever replied to his work or given him a justification for saying that he is wrong and they are right. There have been a number of sort of, you might say, people using the computer system and the internet to sound off against John Sandford. And from time to time, John Sandford tries to deal with the best of these critiques, but they're not really by the experts who know what they're talking about. Amongst the experts, there is a silence, and the only reasonable reason why they have been silent is because they don't have an answer. And that's important, because if evolution is fundamentally flawed because mutations destroy design, not create it, there is no more fundamental flaw in evolutionary theory than that. You know, you're dealing with 2/3 of the theory. There are only 3 parts to the theory, that is mutations, natural selection and time. Well, if you've concluded that natural selection is not relevant because it can't deal with these things, And the other two, mutations and time, actually destroys design, not creates it. There is nothing left to the theory. It is a bankrupt, false theory. I'm being very strong here, but I think actually one has to realize the evidence is so overwhelmingly against evolution that it is fair to call it a false theory, and it should be discarded. And it's of critical importance it's discarded, because the eternal salvation of millions of people is being shipwrecked because they've assumed the experts are right when they say there is no God. Actually, the Bible's correct when it says we are without excuse. Creation declares us a God. When we look at the trees and the countryside and all around us, what we see is something that is brilliantly designed. Biological life is brilliantly designed. Yes, it is flawed and fallen, but that we know from the Bible would be the case. But fundamentally, it is a brilliant design. And that should lead us to a belief in God and a seeking after God. Well, thank you for listening.